I'm talking about, as an MMA person, I'm talking about a person who now doesn't even do MMA, who's focused more on self-defense and combat, like fighting, that sort of fighting. My perspective is you should always train as if you are training for absolute violence. That way it makes you honest. So even if you are training...
What do you mean by like
what
you
I
only
mean,
train, like are you saying the self-defense, are you talking more like Krav Maga, like that kind
no,
of...
no, not the corporate stuff. I mean like philosophically, like so say philosophically, so if you're doing a combat sport or a martial art, wrestling, fencing, boxing, whatever, jiu-jitsu, I feel you would get better at your sport, at your craft, at your trade, if you think to yourself that maybe you might have to use this to protect yourself and your family, right? So that's the fundamentals, all right? That's the principle of combat sports. Self-defense, right? Protect yourself. Because what happens if you are in a grappling match or if you are in a boxing match or whatever, and the dude comes at you hot? He loses self-control and he's going reckless and all that. You need to know how to protect yourself, okay, just in case. But also you might have to do a self-defense situation. And then that teaches a certain degree of control. That teaches you how to control the person's body, that controls your own mind, controls them. And then that way you can break it all down and you can go back to whatever the rules of the sport is. Because, let's be honest. Once again, I don't follow grappling competition that much anymore. But, the rules, so grappling is like MMA. It's this weird conglomerate of sports that are clumped together. But there's a big difference between ONE FC and Bellator and the UFC if you're a fighter.
Yeah.
If you're a fan, it's like, that's all MMA. You know what I mean? Whereas in grappling, a lot of these guys are expected to compete in all these different types of grappling organizations, and there's very nuanced rules.
Different rule sets.
Very rules set, yeah. So high-level fans can understand it and appreciate it, but the athletes have to make all these adjustments, and it changes their game plans. And if you think about if wrestling, when they do that to wrestling every so often, with, how many points they can score, and then before the round ends, right? And it changes all the time, and that really does change how you compete, and that changes how you prepare for a competition. But if you understand the fundamentals of combat sports, i.e. self-defense first, right? And self-control, above all else self-control, that is a huge factor that I think is deficit for a lot of people that are going at, maybe at the lower level, not necessarily the higher level. Say, getting in there and getting emotional and screaming and jumping up and down, then talking about honor and being humble. How is that honorable, jumping up and down, screaming and doing, some celebratory Fortnite dance over the corpse of your vanquished opponent that you just played a sport with, or saying you're humble when all you're talking about is you playing a sport, right? Mm-hmm. And you see a lot of these younger guys that are doing it now, and they did in the past, don't get me wrong, but now I think it's a social media dominated thing.
Well, it's Conor McGregor definitely opened the floodgates to that.
Yeah. You had a Chael Sonnen back in the day who did it with tongue in cheek. And then you got a Conor McGregor who does it personally, yeah. And he doesn't have any self-control. He's reckless. But what we're learning that those people are rewarded for that bad behavior and that grossness. And most people understand it's gross, it's cringe or whatever, but it's sort of gross. But what I'm getting at with the other stuff, with the the positional stuff, is there's no self-control.
Yeah.
Because what happens is you got people in training now who are rolling with someone, and then they're yanking on.
A heel hook,
a knee bar.
With a white belt.
Yeah, they don't have to.
Yeah.
They don't have to do that. Practice control. Practice dominating the control. Same with sparring. If you're moving around with a guy and he's trying to jab, and you can control a guy for a round with a jab, a feathery jab, man, you know what I mean? That's good for a fight. Now, let's get in. I'm going to knock my sparring partner out. Bring me another one next. When was that ever good?
That's the interesting thing that you just brought up. So back in the day, I imagine you obviously knew a lot less about CTE and the fucking... No.
Everyone knew...
We use all pretty...
pugilistic dementia, it was called back then. Everyone was well aware. You were well aware because you had, say, take 1982, for example, in boxing. You had a lot of like Mung Dok Kim died in the ring, and Ray Mancini, his whole entire mindset changed as a fighter. Emil Griffith in the 60s and all these fighters were killing fighters in the ring.
Yeah.
From weight cuts and then the brain lean. You had Jerry McCullum, all these sort of fighters. People were well aware of a combat athlete was well aware of that sort of long-term damage, and it was like I said, it was called pugilistic dementia back then. The science may be a little bit different, where it's including, say, powerlifting now and other things, but NFL players, rugby players, there's heaps of people that we were well aware that were getting this sort of thing. And the sparring culture, I think that is something that sort of changes, because you have a Mike Tyson who will pay guys, $100 a round, whatever, when $100 is a lot of money, or even $1,000 or whatever. And they would go really, really hard because that was what they were doing to finish off for the thing. But just because Floyd Mayweather does it for his own entertainment when he brings these guys in and they do that, so that does not mean that's normal. Like you watch a lot of, if for real fight fans, if they watch, say, boxing, for example, if they're watching, say, a Frank Bruno preparing for an opponent, and he brings in a sparring partner, right? That might be a journeyman guy that might be in the top 50, let's say, and he'll do rounds with him. And you watch him controlling the guy, working, that guy's giving him feedback, that guy's talking to him and his coach, they're working with him, etc. There's a really good miniature documentary of Jeremy Williams getting kicked out of Lennox Lewis's training camp when he was fighting Evander Holyfield for the first time. And you see the culture of, like, you know, the professionalism, except for Jeremy Williams is a bit of a jerk at that, which is why he gets kicked out. But it's control. They're hitting each other, but they're not fighting each other. And when I was brought in as a sparring partner for Jamie Tahuna, when he was fighting the UFC, it was, you didn't go 100%. You worked on control. It was like, you know, you let off and then you work things. He might be wanting to work a specific thing. Like he might want to throw a left hook, right? He was, for one of the fights, he was fighting Ryan Jimmo, who was a really good kicker. So I had to try to set up spin kicks, different ways to throw spin kicks, throw different types of kicks. And Jamie would try to put me on my back, or he'd try to set up left hooks and all that. So I understood what he was doing. And so the drive to training, we would talk to each other. I said, I'm going to really try to nail you with this, or he'd try to do this or whatever. His coaches would say, look, I want you to really go after him today, that sort of thing. But by going after him, they meant give him pace, tempo, and pressure.
Pressure.
Not 100%.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Not power, just pressure.
Because he's paying me $1,000 a week to be there as his training partner and his sparring partner. So it's not about me, it's about him. He's the one who's at the fight, not me. So I'm going in there and I'm just doing the job, and I'll say to him, you know, like, what I have to do, you know, what do you want to work on this? If we're doing like wrestling drills, like my single leg, double leg, we do that for an hour, single leg, double leg, that sort of thing. So it's lots of repetitions, a lot of fundamental stuff. But the main thing you're working on is the distance pressure. Let's say I'm moving with him or whatever, and he's practicing his movement, his upper body movement, and do I feel small? Do I feel like he's shutting me down before we even touch each other? Is he cutting me off the ring, okay? Is he trapping me? And then if I throw that jab, if he slips, okay? If I throw that jab, is he slipping? If I throw a kick and he pulls back, they're the little things we're working on. Those are the things that win you fights at a higher level. Mm-hmm. But these amateurs that are coming through now, and I was someone who was coaching people a bit more. I don't do it anymore. But they don't want to listen. A lot of guys don't want to listen. That's the truth. They'll tell you. Because what happens is I feel that there's a culture coming through with the fight community now, and I can say this as someone who's more on the outside of it now than on the inside of it. There's a culture coming through in the fight community where people don't want to be told truth. They want to hear what will satiate their ego or satisfy themselves. And then what will happen is these people will retire injured and underwhelmed by their career or whatever else, and they'll fall short of their ambitions and desires, and then they'll go, oh yeah, that was right. And then they're going to be just someone like myself that's going to go, oh, you should have done this, you know. But you learn, and that's the wisdom that you have from experience. But I feel the reason why we get a lot of older fighters that don't coach as much anymore, because I used to go, why are these old fighters not coaching anymore? They got all this knowledge now. Because no one fucking wants to listen to them. Because it's like, you had your time, grandpa, you know, whatever. I can get on Instagram and I can do 1,000 kicks, right, at 44 years of age after doing a long day of physical labor.
That fucking baffles me out.
But, you know, but why can I do that? Why can I do that?
Just
you know
appropriate training.
But what am I doing or not doing? You know what I mean? Okay, I'm not fighting anymore, right? But why can I do that? And then you got some 21, 23, 24, 25-year-old that wants to do all this other stuff, and they're not doing the fundamentals. Why is not many people shadowboxing? Why are not the shadowboxing rounds anymore? But they want to go and
everyone just wants to get in and spar.
Because the easiest thing to do, and I did this myself, and then, you know, I did stupid stuff when I was training. I put on oxygen mask, I'd run up and down Wollonga Hill, I'd do hundreds of plyometric jumps and all that. You'd have boxing coaches say, you've got to run the kilometers, you know, you've got to do 10Ks of running before this. You know what? Get good at fighting. Be energy efficient, be smart, understand the craft, be refined, be a craftsman first, be an athlete second. Because the easiest thing to do is to work out. The hardest thing to do is to work it out. And most people want to work out, because me putting on montage music and flipping tires and doing weights and fucking doing Rocky 4 training, that's actually easier than doing Rocky 3 training. Because Rocky 3 training is footwork, rhythm, cadence, timing, and that shit's fucking hard.
All the technique, yeah,
but more than technique is timing. Okay, you try to coach someone how to be like you know, how to flow on it. Say you want to do a wrestling type, right? You know, just a 2-on-1, right? And you want to show them how to do it, and then they want to yank and pull. They want to be strong and pull. But then you feel the good guys. They're like that. They're just boom, boom, and you're gone. Boom, 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 gone. You watch a really good wrestler, and you feel a really good wrestler, and it's different. But they want to yank and pull. Now, what happens when they get in there against an Ivan Drago? You know what I mean? It's or a clubber lang. Like someone who's strong and driven and that wants to destroy you. You can't overpower them. You're dealing with a force of nature. Now, what do you do with the force of nature? You surf it. You don't beat waves. You ride them. They don't want to learn how to ride it. They don't want to learn how to time it. They want to bash everything and be the strongest person in the room. That's great. That manifests the ego. That's the Superman complex, right? But teaching that is freaking hard because there needs a degree of receptiveness and there needs to be the malleability of the person. And there's all these outside influences from social media to all these strength and conditioning, all these other coaches, right? You got one person, let's say one person is an amateur fighter, right? Keyword is an amateur fighter, so they should be learning the craft first. They want to be a professional athlete with no pay. And they've got all these people telling them what they need to do. They've got all these, they're watching UFC fighters, watching what they're doing, all this sort of stuff. Now, they're just an amateur fighter. They're supposed to be learning the fundamentals of the basics. What's the fundamentals of the basics? Good form, good technique, all that sort of stuff. But it's so hard to teach that. It's so hard to get that through people's heads. So what they do is they want to do the fitness stuff, they want to do the conditioning stuff. Are they performing at that high level? You know what I mean? Are they able to do the rounds? Are they able to do the stuff? Are they not injury? You know what I mean? It's like one of those things where the intuition leads them down a certain path because of impulses and things like that. But the reality is if you do less sometimes, you're better off.